Welcome to my YouTube channel, One Race, a Human Race, All Human. Today is Friday, August 20th, 2021.
This is the point of the show where normally I would give you a summary of the current COVID situation in Texas as cases continue to surge. I'm not going to do that tonight. I'm just going to let you listen to these astonishing claims from the GOP Lieutenant Governor of Texas, Dan Patrick.
The COVID is spreading, particularly most of the numbers are with the unvaccinated, and the Democrats like to blame Republicans on that. Well, the biggest group in most states are African Americans who have not been vaccinated. The last time I checked, over 90% of them vote for Democrats in their major cities and major counties. So it's up to the Democrats to get, just as it's up to Republicans, to try to get as many people vaccinated. But we respect the fact that if people don't want the vaccination, we're not going to force it on them.
Frankly, I do not know how to respond to partisanship and bigotry that brazen and that dishonest. Texas State Representative Jasmine Crockett joins me now. Representative Crockett, you are a black woman and a Democrat in Texas. What is your response to what we just heard?
First of all, it's good to see you, Mehdi. When we fled the state of Texas and we said, hey, this is voter suppression. We said, hey, they are pushing forward with specific attacks on people of color. People looked at us and thought, are y'all sure about this? They questioned, and then it was kind of slow to build. Now you see who is in control in Texas. You see that they are consistently targeting black folk in Texas. How in the heck do you say, and they don't care. They're open about it. And sadly enough, I had colleagues that went back to the floor and gave them a quorum because they are going to continue to target black people in our state and blame us for any and everything. And sadly enough, you can't even keep up with the Republicans' lies. So long as they blame anybody but an old white man, then it's fair game. Because we know that this started off with those that were immigrants.
Yes. And Dan Patrick released a statement on Facebook today saying in part, quote, not surprisingly, Democrat social media trolls were up late misstating the facts and fanning the flames of their lies. Federal and state data clearly indicate that black vaccination rates are significantly lower than white or Hispanic rates. Democrats continue to play politics with people's lives, pandering to rather than serving certain constituencies. Aside from the pure projection there, the Washington Post representative citing census data reports that while vaccination rates may be lower for black Texans, unvaccinated white Texans outnumber them 3-1. What's so stunning, by the way, aside from the dishonesty, is that he doesn't see black Texans as his constituents or his responsibility.
No.
He basically says they're Democrats, so it's up to Democrats to get them vaccinated.
Yes, that is exactly how they see it. And you notice that he also said in our urban centers, right? And when we talked about the laws and how they're trying to formulate them, they are attacking the urban centers. They are basically saying, throw away all the urban centers. We only want to deal with those rural Texans because the rural Texans, well, we know that most of them are white. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. And the fact that they are playing with people's lives. COVID isn't a game. It should not be a partisan issue. The fact that our governor is on national news almost every single day for failing in some way, it is a problem. I need people to finally stand up and say, you know what? I'm going to vote for me over politics and games because there are children that are dying because they refuse to just listen to science and somehow have turned a simple mask into something that's partisan. Same thing that they're doing with the vaccine and acting like black folk are the problem with spreading COVID.
Yeah, I mean, if Texas was a TV show and I was a writer on that TV show and I said to the other writers, let's have the governor get COVID while he's stopping everyone from stopping COVID, you would say, that's unrealistic. We can't let that happen, but that has actually happened. Let me put this to you. Author and commentator Keith Boykin tweeted this response to Dan Patrick. He said, Texas Governor Greg Abbott is blocking the black mayors of Houston and Dallas from implementing CDC-recommended COVID rules to save people's lives, and Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick has the audacity to blame black people for the spread of COVID in his state. This is the same theme we've seen with voter suppression in your state, right? State Republicans trying to override the autonomy of Democrats, especially Democrats of color.
Absolutely. It's interesting because the areas that we saw taking a lead in defying the governor's orders when it came to COVID, guess what? They were the large urban centers. It started off in Dallas County and Harris County and even Tarrant County. And Tarrant County has been Republican for some time. I mean, it's trending the right way. But we saw them defying them everywhere. And now it even went to Paris, Texas, an area that voted for Trump, at least in the 70 percentile. So you would think that they would say, maybe this isn't really a good thing for us to do if we really want to be reelected in this state. Maybe we should let this one go and allow the locals to do what they're supposed to do, because we used to be the party that believed in local control.
We're almost out of time, but I have to ask, the state legislature is now back in business. It has a quorum. Enough Texas House Democrats have returned to resume business in the special session. That means a restrictive voting bill can go through. Do you think that was a mistake to give back the quorum to that state legislature?
It was absolutely a mistake. I don't even know. It was a colossal failure, not just a mistake. We are talking about, we went all the way to DC. We had multiple levels of litigation as relates to warrants. We've done everything, and we are in the middle of the game. I fully anticipate that the John Lewis Voting Rights Act will be moved forward this upcoming week, and we decided that we were going to throw in the towel. I'm very disappointed.
More than disappointed. It's an absolute tragedy if this photo restriction law goes through in Texas. Texas State Representative Jasmine Crocker, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
There is a need for a federal tabulation commission of voting experts based upon Article 1, Section 4, Clause 1 of the United States Constitution. When it comes to federal elections, federal, United States Senate, United States House of Representatives, the presidency of the United States of America, federal elections, where Congress can decide the time, the place, and manner of holding the election. It's in the Constitution. So we need a independent, impartial, competent, nonpartisan tabulation commission of voting experts to count the undisputed votes and the disputed votes, to rectify the disputed votes, and then certify the winners and losers in the federal election. The federal election. Also, we see from this clip that our white brothers and sisters in Paris, Texas, and other parts of the country are waking up. They're waking up. They're seeing people that look exactly like them in hospitals who have COVID-19, the Delta variant, and they recognize that they have been lied to. And they're finding out that many of these Republican governors and elected officials, that when they come down with COVID-19, so like Senator Lindsey Graham, or the Governor Abbott of Texas, right? Lindsey Graham's of South Carolina, he's a senator, and Governor Abbott is the Republican governor of Texas. They both came down with what? With COVID-19, and they had their shots. Why don't they tell the people, all people, to get their vaccinations? Wear a mask. Doctors wear masks when they do operations all the time. It's safe. Wear a mask. Get tested. Let us save the children. Jesus said that I am come that they might have life and have it more abundantly. John 10:10. It's about being pro-life. Senator Bernie Sanders' $3.5 trillion budget. It's the human infrastructure budget. Deals with life. Life inside the womb, getting medical care. Life after a child is born. Daycare. Free community college. Taking care of seniors. And middle age. And young people. Everyone. Having the Biden dollars, right? The child care tax credit, right? Continuing. Where we take kids out of poverty. Hey, that's what it means to be a Christian. To love God and to love your neighbor yourself. Who is your neighbor? Anyone in need. Showing concern. Showing compassion. Elevating lives. Bringing hope. Helping people who are in need. Go back and read the Good Samaritan in Luke chapter 10, starting at verse 25, right? The minister, the pastor, messed up. The deacon, messed up. But the Samaritan, despised Samaritan, half Jewish, half Arab, was a hero. Had compassion, concern for the person who was in need of help. Go back and read. Matthew chapter 25, right? Around verse what, 30, 35 there? When I was hungry, huh? Did you feed me? Read it. That's the test. These are the words of Jesus, not me. It's the Bible. It's Jesus. Either you are a true Christian or you are a slave master Christian. Either you follow the real Jesus as articulated in the Word of God, right? Treating people the way you want to be treated. Doing for others as you have them do for you. Do for others. Help others as you would that men and women should do to you. You do to them. Huh? Check out Matthew, chapter 7, verse 12. And Luke, chapter 6, and verse 31. The golden rule. Check it out for yourself. Read the Word of God for yourself. Read Jesus' words for yourself. And then you will support the $3.5 trillion human infrastructure bill, which is down from $6 trillion, which will bring life, make people healthy, happy, whole. And then let us make sure that we take this vaccination and vaccinate all people in the world. Because everyone on this planet known as Earth has right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Thank you so much for being on my YouTube channel. One race, the human race. We're all human. God bless you. God keep you. May the Lord's light shine on you. Don't give up. Don't give in. Don't give out. Life will get better and better and better. Today is Friday, August 20th, 2021.
That's all for All In for this week. Chris Hayes will be back next week. Don't miss my show this Sunday, airing at 8 p.m. Eastern here on MSNBC. My guests include Mary Trump and Greta Thunberg. Time now, though, for the Rachel Maddow Show. Good evening, Rachel.
Good evening, Mehdi. You've done a fantastic job with filling in. I know you get no rest whatsoever before going back to your regular schedule. But I hope that you at least know how great a job you've done, how much we appreciate it, ma'am.
Rachel, I appreciate that. I appreciate our brief chats here at Night Live on TV. But thank you for your support always.
All right, we'll see you Sunday, Mehdi. Thank you. And thanks to home for joining us this hour. Very happy to have you here this Friday night. There is a lot going on tonight, particularly for Friday. A lot of news that we are tracking. James Laporta, Jim Laporta, is a U.S. Marine. He was an infantryman who was a veteran of the war in Afghanistan. Mr. Laporta is also now an excellent journalist. We've had him here on the show several times, featuring his reporting for, among other places, the Military Times. Mr. Laporta now works as an investigative correspondent for the Associated Press. And tonight he was first to break the news that a new phase is underway, or at least a new resource is being brought to bear on the evacuation effort in Afghanistan. This is very interesting and potentially important. Mr. Laporta first to report at the AP today that U.S. forces in Afghanistan, including intelligence agencies, have started using helicopters to pick people up to safely bring them to the Kabul airport so they can be airlifted out. He said today, quote, "I've been sitting on this, but can now report U.S. helicopters ferried 96 Afghans for evacuation, signaling military flights occurring outside Kabul airport. CIA, DIA, which means Defense Intelligence Agency, and SOF, Special Operations Forces, are collecting up U.S. and Afghans from outside Kabul airport for sortie rescue." Now, soon after James Laporta posted that late this afternoon, Zeke Miller and 3 other reporters at AP had this full story. Quote, "U.S. military helicopters flew into Taliban-held Kabul on Friday to scoop up would-be evacuees." American officials confirmed to the AP today. Senior American military officials told the AP that an American CH-47 Chinook helicopter picked up Afghans, mostly women and children, and ferried them to Hamid Karzai International Airport on Friday. The 3rd Brigade Combat Team of the Army's 82nd Airborne Division airlifted the Afghans from Camp Sullivan, which is quite near the Kabul airport. The officials said such sorties have been underway for several days from various points in Kabul as Afghans seek to flee the country taken over by the Taliban. Intelligence teams inside Kabul are helping guide both Americans and Afghans and their families to the airport, or are arranging for them to be rescued by other means. Now, this is interesting. Quote, for those living in cities and provinces outside of Kabul, CIA case officers, special operation forces, and agents from the Defense Intelligence Agency on the ground are gathering some U.S. citizens and some Afghans who worked for the U.S. at predetermined pickup sites. Again, that's outside of Kabul. Quote, the officials would not detail where these airlift sites were for security reasons. They spoke on condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to discuss ongoing operations. Let it be so that these are ongoing operations, and that this reflects not just new ambition, but new capability. Let's hope this can work to get more people safely out. As the situation outside the airport in Kabul stays bad, as it seems to be getting, if anything, even more dangerous with each passing day. As of this evening, the Pentagon is only confirming some of the AP's reporting on the record about helicopters being used to airlift people to safety. Pentagon's only confirming some of that, but since some of this new reporting is about not just military operations, but also what's being described as intelligence agency operations, it's perhaps not surprising that the Pentagon might be confirming it. I'm not saying that because I know anything that's not been printed or reported. I'm just saying that based on what I know about the Pentagon not confirming anything about what intelligence agencies do as a general course. We shall see. We shall see. On the record and out loud, the Pentagon did say today that they greatly increased the number of people they were able to get out from the airport today. They announced at the beginning of this week, you might remember, that they thought the upper limit of how many people the U.S. could logistically get out, literally the number of seats they'd have on airplanes each day, would be between 5,000 and 9,000 seats per day, which meant 5,000 to 9,000 people per day could be evacuated. And we heard that number at the beginning of that week, and since then it's been disheartening each day to hear them report to us that actually the total number of people who were able to be put on planes and were able to be taken out each day has been way lower than that. At the beginning of the week, it was less than 1,000 people. By yesterday, they'd gotten up to about 2,000 people flown out in one day, still way short of the physical capacity for what they could do. But then today, it seems like something started happening. Today, they said they flew out 5,700 people, which means they are starting to fill the seats. If the maximum capacity per day is 5,000 to 9,000 seats, and today they got over 5,000 people out, well, that is what we have been hoping for, that every available seat will be filled. That's also reportedly what President Biden ordered military commanders to get done, to get the seats filled on all these flights, to have no empty seats on any plane leaving Kabul. So a lot of interesting news, a lot of potentially, not just interesting, but potentially important news there coming out today, including into this evening. We're going to have more coming up live with NBC's Pentagon correspondent Courtney Kubi. We've actually got multiple updates on that situation coming up tonight, so stick with us for that this hour. We're also tonight going to be checking in with a doctor, a pulmonologist, which means he's a specialist in the respiratory system, who is not only working in just the right field, he's also working right in the bullseye of one of the most overwhelmed communities in the country right now in terms of hospital capacity having run out statewide days ago, while the patient numbers in that state have still been rising precipitously every day since then. Going to be speaking with that doctor live coming up in just a few minutes as well. I have to tell you, amazingly today, the state health officer for the great state of Mississippi was asked to comment on weird, disturbing new reports in that very hard-hit state. Right, in Mississippi, the hospitals are full. Federal government and charitable groups are now coming in, setting up field hospitals like in the parking garages of the state's flagship medical center. Mississippi, the low vaccine uptake seems to have just doomed the state's hospitals as the huge number of new infections and newly very sick people are just swamping the system. In that state that frankly has enough to deal with, they are now facing a new challenge related to COVID. The Mississippi State Department of Health confirming today that, quote, at least 70% of the recent calls to poison control in Mississippi have been related to ingestion of livestock or animal formulations of ivermectin purchased at livestock supply centers. Ivermectin. Why are people taking livestock formulations of ivermectin in Mississippi? Ivermectin, livestock formulation, that's a horse dewormer. Literally, people won't take the vaccine because they're super suspicious of that, but they're taking horse deworming medication that they're buying in a feed store? For COVID? Why, on top of everything else Mississippi has to deal with right now, why are they dealing with this? I don't know, but I have a guess.
We know that our FDA has in many ways failed us by not allowing for the use of ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, both of which are used around the world to reduce COVID hospitalizations and deaths.
I pelted them with questions about COVID-19 and the vaccine and therapeutics, hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, and ivermectin, as well as other proactive treatments and practices were already helping COVID-19 patients all across the country.
On June 5th, Weinstein discussed the benefits of a drug called ivermectin, which can and is around the world used to treat and prevent the spread of the coronavirus.
You thought it was just hydroxychloroquine, right? Kind of, me too. I guess I haven't been paying enough attention, but apparently they have been pushing this as well. Oh, ivermectin, it's curing COVID all over the world. No, it's not. There's been one significant study about ivermectin saying, oh, this works for COVID. That study has been withdrawn because the data in it was apparently faked and the introduction to it was apparently plagiarized. Nevertheless, Fox News is busy saying, don't take the vaccine, but do take this horse deworming medication. Trust us, it's proven. You could trust them, or you could trust the FDA, which says, do not take ivermectin for COVID. You could trust the NIH, which says, do not take ivermectin for COVID. The WHO says, do not take ivermectin for COVID. Even the company that makes the drug says, my God, seriously, people, do not take ivermectin for COVID. Yes, use it to deworm your horses, but this is not a COVID drug. Fox News says otherwise, though. And so now, here, everything else they have to deal with. Here's the state health department confirming to the Mississippi Free Press today that, yes, 70% of poison control calls in the state of Mississippi now are about people taking this drug, ivermectin, that they're buying at agricultural feed stores. They're taking a livestock formulation of it because, hey, Fox News didn't warn them not to do that. For all the pressure on hospital beds in Mississippi, the state health department confirming that at least one of the beds in the state is right now being taken up by someone who had to be hospitalized for taking this drug that Fox News Channel told them to take. So then they picked some up at the feed store, and here's the state health officer of Mississippi today, exasperated, having to try to talk people out of even this.
Please work with your doctor. This is medical treatment. You wouldn't get your chemotherapy at a feed store. You wouldn't treat your pneumonia with your animal's medication. It can be dangerous to get the wrong doses of medication, especially for something that's meant for a horse or a cow. We understand the environment we live in, but it's really important if people have medical needs, go through your physician or provider.
I know we are in a crisis in multiple states now because of low vaccine uptake. I kind of thought we were past the take other drugs instead that right-wing media and Trump fans tell you to take, but I guess not. I did not know we were still in the snake oil part of this. But I'll tell you also, I went through some of the statements that former President Trump has made since leaving office, and he actually has gone back to the hydroxychloroquine nonsense again since leaving office.
Hydroxychloroquine actually works. Remember? I made a mistake on hydroxy. I should have said, hydroxychloroquine is a disaster. Please do not use it, they would have said. Instead, I said it works. And now reports are coming out that it works.
No, there are not reports coming out that it works. It doesn't work. It's not a good COVID drug. Neither is your horse stuff. That was his first big political rally as a post-president in Ohio about 8 weeks ago, going back to the hydroxychloroquine thing again. I will tell you, he's doing another rally tomorrow in rural Alabama. Hospitals in Alabama are completely overrun with COVID patients. The actual town he's appearing in literally just declared a COVID emergency today, and he's going to be there doing a big rally tomorrow. We'll see how that goes. But here's one other thing to see. In that same speech that I just played a clip from, that same rally where he goes back to the hydroxychloroquine nonsense, that was about 8 weeks ago. This is from that same speech.
Worse than Afghanistan. How about that? Worse than Afghanistan, where, by the way, I started the process. All the troops are coming back home. They couldn't stop the process. 21 years is enough, don't we think? 21 years. They couldn't stop the process. They wanted to, but it was very tough to stop the process when other things. Years by a government that wouldn't last. The only way they last is if we're there. What are we going to say? We'll stay for another 21 years, then we'll stay for another 50. The whole thing is ridiculous. So we're bringing our troops back home from Iraq. We're bringing the troops back home from Afghanistan.
I started the process, all the troops coming back home. They couldn't stop the process once I started it. It was very tough to stop the process. And then he says the government there won't last. The only way they last is if we're there. It's ridiculous. So I started the process. They couldn't stop it to bring all the troops home. The audience applauds. That was 8 weeks ago. And you know, whether or not you think it is a good idea or a bad idea to have brought home U.S. troops from the war in Afghanistan, here's the former president bragging about how he's the one who set that in motion. And he set it in motion in a way that could not be stopped. Even though, he said the Afghan government would definitely fall as soon as our troops left. He's bragging about that, right? He's getting applause for that from his supporters. And now, it's actually less than 8 weeks since he said that. U.S. troops, in fact, did leave, and the Afghan government did, in fact, immediately fall. And now he's leading his supporters in, unbridled, chest-pounding outrage that President Biden must resign, that it's so terrible that U.S. troops left and that the Afghan government fell. Again, whether or not you are for or against U.S. troops leaving Afghanistan, you can't be for it. You can't take credit for doing it, and for doing it in such a way that your successor could not reverse. You can't say you were for it, take credit for doing it, say that you made it so that nobody else had any choice, and then also be against it when it happens. Can you? I don't know. It seems like these days anything is possible. Take, for example, Republican Congressman Bill Posey of Florida. Here's a statement his office put out this week, Tuesday of this week. Quote, recent events in Afghanistan underscore the need for a proper plan when conducting military operations. Every effort should have been made to evacuate Americans, our allies, and military equipment before pulling out. Okay, fair enough. Every effort should have been made to evacuate our allies, Congressman Posey. Every effort? Every effort? 3 weeks before he put out that statement, Congressman Bill Posey of Florida was confronted with an actual thing he could do on this actual subject. Not theoretical, but what some might call making an actual plan related to military operations. 22nd of July, House of Representatives voted on whether or not to expedite the processing of special immigrant visas for our Afghan allies, for Afghan interpreters and contractors and security personnel who worked with U.S. forces in Afghanistan. He says this week, every effort should have been made to evacuate our allies. Literally 3 weeks. Three weeks before that, he got the opportunity to vote, to make more of an effort to evacuate our allies, and he voted no on that. He voted no on doing more to evacuate our Afghan allies, and now he says he's outraged that more wasn't done. Can you do that? Can President Trump both take credit for withdrawing U.S. troops from Afghanistan, for setting it in motion in a way that could not be reversed, and also be against the fact that it happened? Can a congressman like Bill Posey in Florida be outraged that more was not done to make sure our Afghan allies were evacuated right after he voted against doing more to make sure we would evacuate our Afghan allies? Can you? Can you do that? Olivia Troy served as counterterrorism and homeland security advisor to Vice President Mike Pence during the Trump administration. She served as a key convener of the White House COVID task force. And she quit that senior level job in the Trump White House during the COVID crisis. She became a whistleblower, basically, about the things that she saw within the administration that her conscience could no longer bear and that she felt the public needed to know. Today, Ms. Troy broke new ground and explained something publicly that had never been explained before. Why it is, what explains, why our Afghan allies, as valued and high priority as they are to us, why Afghans who had this special visa category created for them because they worked with U.S. troops, they worked with the U.S. government, they worked as part of the security mission in Afghanistan, they helped our forces there. Why can't they get their visa applications processed? Why is that process so broken and under-resourced? Why does it take so long? Here's Olivia Troy earlier today. Quote, I met with numerous external organizations during my White House tenure who advocated for refugees and pleaded for help in getting U.S. allies through the process. I got the phone calls and letters as the Homeland Security and Counterterrorism Advisor to Vice President Mike Pence. She said, quote, the system wouldn't budge, regardless of how much this was argued about in National Security Council meetings. The Pentagon weighed in, saying we needed to get these allies through the process. Mattis and others sent memos. Now, that's checkable, actually, and we checked, and she is right about that. Here's Defense Secretary Jim Mattis's memo in September 2018 telling the administration, advising the administration as Secretary of Defense, do not limit the numbers of people you're going to let in. We need to protect and prioritize these Iraqis and Afghans who aligned with our diplomats and warfighters by providing essential mission support. Olivia Troy today saying, quote, Mattis and others sent memos. We all knew the urgency, but the resources had been depleted. Well, what does that mean? Why were the resources depleted? Well, she has the story. She was there. She says, quote, there were cabinet meetings about this during the Trump administration where Stephen Miller would peddle his racist hysteria about Iraq and Afghanistan. He and his enablers across government would undermine anyone who worked on solving the SIV issue, the special immigrant visa issue, by devastating the system at Homeland Security and state. She says, quote, I tracked this issue personally in my role during my White House tenure. We got nowhere on it because Trump and Stephen Miller had watchdogs in place at the Justice Department and Homeland Security, at state and security agencies that made the already cumbersome SIV process even more challenging. Quote, the fear of people across the Trump administration to counter these enablers was palpable. There were numerous behind closed door meetings strategizing about how to navigate this issue. She says, quote, Trump had 4 years while putting this plan in place to evacuate these Afghan allies who were the lifelines for many of us who spent time in Afghanistan. They'd been waiting a long time. The process slowed to a trickle for reviews, other priorities, then it came to a halt. Now, to be clear, what Olivia Troy is saying here is that for the Afghans who helped U.S. troops and U.S. forces in Afghanistan, who are now getting so much attention, right? For all the right reasons. These are Afghan allies of our forces. They are supposed to be able to get visas to come here with their families in thanks for what they did for our country. A special visa category was created for them for just that purpose. She's saying, yes, that process of getting that visa was already cumbersome. But she's saying under the Trump administration, while they were making overt plans to end the war in Afghanistan and bring all U.S. troops home from Afghanistan, like Trump was bragging about, right? While Trump was bragging that, yes, certainly he'd bring home all the troops, and yes, certainly the Afghan government would collapse as soon as he did that, but he wanted all the troops out anyway, so that's what he was setting in motion in a way that couldn't be reversed by anyone. While they were setting all that in motion during the Trump administration, they were also simultaneously deliberately sabotaging the process. What did she say? She called it devastating the system at Homeland Security and the State Department on purpose, so that those visas for our Afghan allies would get stuck in the system forever, so those Afghan allies wouldn't be able to get out, as they were planning to take out all U.S. troops, whereupon they knew the Afghan government would collapse. They deliberately sabotaged the process to make sure those Afghan visas would not be processed in any timely manner. Elizabeth Newman was a senior Homeland Security official under Trump. She today publicly confirmed Olivia Troy's account of how this happened inside the Trump administration. The Trump administration at the highest levels deliberately sabotaging the visa process for these Afghan allies, which is why so many of them have been stuck all of this time. And you know, some of this has been hiding in plain sight. In 2019, a federal judge ruled that the Trump administration actually broke the law by radically dragging out the process of administering these visas and refusing to give answers to Afghans and even members of Congress who were inquiring on behalf of Afghans who had worked with U.S. troops and who had applied for these special visas. A federal judge ruled that they broke the law by breaking the system so that these visas would never get processed. It was hiding in plain sight that the system was broken under the Trump administration. But still, it is another thing altogether to have senior officials from inside that administration say, yeah, that process was broken. It was broken deliberately. Deliberately, in order to strand the Afghans who helped us. Joining us now is Olivia Troy, who served in the White House as a top advisor to Vice President